Hi there, I'm Mike Madge. I'm back with Sailjuice.com, and today is a privilege. I get to talk with a guy they refer to as the legend, and for good reason. He's won at all levels. I mean, on multi-hulls, tornadoes, F-18s, A-cats. If it's on two hulls, he makes it go fast. He's been involved with America's Cup, Bobo Ocean Racing. Like I said earlier, it's a privilege to have you on here, and thanks for joining us, Mitch Booth.
Thanks. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations. I mean, 2021 has been quite a good year for you, I would think. You just capped off the Rolex Middle Sea race with a win on a pretty famous boat, Comanche, and you've also won the F-18 Worlds.
Yeah. No, it's been a great year. I think after all the shutdown, there was not much happening in the last 18 months. We were pretty happy to get going in the summer with some racing again. And, I love racing with my kids. So first opportunity up was the F-18 Worlds, and happy to take that title for a fourth time, which was nice with my youngest son, Ruben.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that because we really want to delve into your cat sailing experience. But first of all, just let's start off with Comanche a bit here. You're the Middle Rolex Sea. You were the skipper on the boat. What exactly did that role involve?
Well, it's a project which we took over a couple of years ago. We manage the team, and part of my role is to be race skipper. So it's almost a full-time job, preparing the boat with the boat captain from France, Damien, and a shore team. And then, of course, once we get going into the racing, I'm organising all the team, selecting the sailors, preparing the whole project, basically from scratch to end of the race. I'm responsible for everything. So it's a big role, but I enjoy it. It's team management. But it's also team racing, so there's every aspect of a big project involved.
So for us mere mortals that really enjoy sailing but don't get to experience something like that, maybe what does it feel like to sail on what is it, an 80-foot carbon fiber boat?
Or it's actually a 100-footer. It's a 100-footer, yeah. It's a powerful boat. It's very wide, very powerful, a lot of sail area. And it's actually closer to sailing a multi-hull than a monohull. It likes sailing with a lot of heel. So we're, typically sailing downwind with, in a decent breeze with more than 20 degrees heel. And it's fast, it's as fast as multi-hull. And we were not that far off, the mod 70s, which are pretty much the benchmark in, medium distance offshore racing at the moment. So, obviously the foiling multi-hulls are much quicker, but the Comanche's not that far behind. And we were racing against a 125-footer in the Middle Sea race, the new Scorpius. There's a state-of-the-art 125-foot canting keel carbon fiber thing, which we didn't know how we were going to line up against them. But again, another famous multi-hull sailor, Fernando Etchefari, is running that project. So it was nice to line up against him again. But yeah, Comanche is a real weapon. It's been a really iconic sort of ocean racing boat. It's got a lot of records, a lot of race wins. It's designed for speed, not for comfort. And it's a pleasure to sail on it with such a great team.
Now, speaking of the team, you had a pretty elite list of crew on there. I mean, Tom Slingsby, Kyle Langford. So who got the chance to be behind the wheel? Who were your helmsmen?
Well, it's offshore racing. Nobody can stick to the wheel for more than an hour or two at a time. But so we share it between probably 6 primary helmsmen. And then there's a couple of other guys that'll help out, if it's long hours, in the night in hard conditions, you got to rotate the guys as often as possible to keep fresh. It was only a 40-hour race to do 600 miles, but it was strong conditions. So, we're pushing the boat very hard, going downwind at 25 plus knots. And you've got to be really focused with that sort of boat in the night in those conditions. So it's a continually changing helm and trim. It's very active, not much sleep going on.
So now I want to get into. I mean, you sketched your ground on multi-hulls and made your name in multi-hulls. So we really want to touch on that and maybe just start us off with your first multi-hull you started sailing on and where that was and the experiences.
Well, that feels like another lifetime ago. I started very young in just north of Sydney on Pittwater. And I was lucky enough that my father, J Booth, he gave me the chance to sail on a 14-foot cat when I was 7, which we built at home. And I was in a really competitive but very nice environment in a local club there. No clubhouse, just off the beach. And at that time, through the 70s and 80s, it produced probably more catamaran world champions than any other sailing club around. I mean, guys like Ian Bashford and Chris Cairns and Rod Waterhouse, we all grew up together and came from that club. So it was a great youth sailing experience to come through that first probably 10 or 15 years there, and then moving on to the Olympic stuff. When I was only in my late teens, I was already starting to have a go at Olympic sailing. It was just a great training ground, to learn the skills of beach cat sailing, and that showed. I think the club was outstanding.
Now it's interesting because I had a chance to race against a few of those guys, Ian Bashford. I mean, another name, Anthony Duchal. I believe he's from that club.
Still there, yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about a lot of these guys that have made a name for themselves in multi-hull sailing, I mean, whether it's Jason Waterhouse, Glenn Ashby, yourself, Rod Waterhouse, they all have that similar experience where they started on a small boat, a 14-foot cat. So, I mean, with the way state of the art, the way things are going, do you think kids could still start off on that small boat and still get all the learning experience they need to graduate up to bigger boats?
It's critical. I mean, I always believe you learn your skills on the small boats and then you can move on to, medium and larger boats. It very rarely happens the other way around. On a small boat, you can go out, crash and burn as many times as you want, and spend a lot of time at it without huge expense. Whereas if you try and take a 100-footer and, test and try all your theories and, it's not that easy to get access to that. So small boats, whether it's dinghies, through opties up to, lasers and whatever else, or small cats, off the beach cats, I think that's a critical step to evolving into a America's Cup or a Volvo race or a maxi race or whatever the professional sailing or Olympic level sailing that you want to get involved with.
Now, it's interesting you said that because I'm sure you'd be familiar with this name. I'm a little older than you, and I remember the first.
I doubt that.
Yeah. The first catamaran book I bought was by a guy named Reg White from the UK. And, yeah. And I still remember at the time, I don't know what it was like when you first started catamaran sailing, but catamaran sailings were a little ostracized. And I remember him stating in his book that small cats would be the breeding ground of elite helmsmen for America's Cup boats. And really, it seems like it's come true. Like he said, the sensitivity in the sports car steering you get with catamarans is highly transferable to any type of boat.
Yeah, well, I think a good sailor is a good sailor. Where they come from, if they're obviously guys like Tom Slingsby, who's just been with us, he's come through monohull dinghies, but he's evolved into high performance America's Cup and foiling boats. He's one of the best helmsmen in the world. But yeah, I think the small boat is the critical part. But There's always been a little bit of stigma about multi-hull sailors being able to sail monohulls at a high level. But I think the America's Cup has given us the chance to match, sailor for sailor, and guys like Glenn Ashby, for example, and Tom Slingsby, and they're guys that have shown they can go across all different ranges of boats, no matter what their background's been. A good sailor is a good sailor.
Now you've done some coaching, and you took on some extreme 40 teams, younger teams, people that are coming from monohulls. What are some of the things you're passing on to them in terms of skills that they need to change or adapt to for a multi-hull? What are some of the key things that you're finding?
Well, the first thing is reaction times. You don't have time to think about it on an extreme 40 or a GC 32, very short course racing. The things happen so quick, whereas there's a bit of a luxury on a slower boat where you've got a little bit more time to react. But multi-hull sailing is very instinctive, I believe. It's really something that you've got to train yourself to react without processing too much thought. It's just an instinctive sort of sailing, particularly in close quarters. The tactics, there's always a lot of discussion that multi-hulls are not tactical. Obviously I'm very biased, but I believe the opposite. Because the game happens so quick, you make one mistake, you'll pay for it. And if you really analyze what you've got to do in a multi-hull race, you've got to be thinking, steps ahead, even legs ahead, to be able to plan what you're doing tactically. You don't have time to think about it. So in the monohull, perhaps, it's slower operation, slower game. You're coming to marks, and you can start planning it, as you're getting to the mark, whereas multi-hull's a bit different.
Yeah, and even like I also race lasers as well as multi-hulls, and I get the chance to talk to a lot of the elite laser sailors, and even Nick Thompson, who's a pretty elite laser sailor for the UK, has mentioned that even laser sailing has changed to more of an apparent wind game, and it's not, we think of a laser tacking quick, but he says if you're making 4 tacks up the weather leg, it's too many.
Yeah.
So with that thought, when you're racing your F-18, which is a fairly quick tacking cat, are you still trying to minimize your tacks, like if you up the course?
Yeah, we try to minimize maneuvers, but it depends on how shifty the breeze is. If it's very shifty, then the loss that you make in attack can sometimes be a bigger gain by taking the shift. Obviously you don't want to be doing too much, but it's quite often that we'll go up at work and do 10 tacks if it's shifty condition.
Yeah. So I just want to pull up some highlights of the recent F-18 Worlds, and I want to share this with you. I mean, you've obviously experienced it, but I want to talk a little bit about the recent Worlds here.
Yeah.
You got that on your screen?
Yeah, I got that one there. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's I don't know which boat that is, but it's definitely from that Worlds.
Sorry, I just messed up. Let me get back to that. So maybe, I mean, you won the race. It looked like a fantastic venue. It looked, right here, the conditions were pretty extreme. Is that something you revel in? I know when you won your Tornado Worlds way back in Houston, you had some heavy air conditions there also. Do you like the big wind?
Well, I like the big wind because I'm pretty heavy, so in the light conditions, I struggle with my weight, but luckily my son Ruben is light, so combined we're pretty close to the ideal F-18 weight. But Yeah, I've always enjoyed strong wind, and that's something I still enjoy. Although I'm getting a bit slower as I get older. Ruben makes me look good, drags me around the course. But yeah, strong
Now,
wind, I'd say, is still a preference over light wind.
now, speaking of sailing with your son there, how is that? I mean, you've obviously had some elite crew with you, right? From John Forbes on the Tornado,
Yeah.
a lot of really good guys that have sailed with. How has your approach changed with racing with your kids, and what was the key to making it work with sailing with a parent son or daughter relationship there?
Well, I've always believed it's a family thing. We try to do things together. It's not just about me going away and racing and leaving the family at home. So all my kids I've been racing with, right from Taylor, my oldest son. We won a Tiger World Championship and a few other events together. And it's always about giving them the opportunity to experience racing at a high level, which I can offer them, and see if they enjoy it. Just have some fun together and teach them some of the skills. How to compete in a sport at at the highest possible level. But it's just enjoyable for me. I could obviously go with a pro crew, but basically the last 10 F18 worlds I've been with my kids, so it's been great.
Now, when you go to a worlds like this, I'm always, I mean, I don't know how much training you got to do or how much time you have to sail the F18, but it always amazes me. I was talking with Glenn Ashby, and he hasn't sailed since the America's Cup, but they seem to be able to get back on the ACAT or whatever boat that their expertise at and just make it go. Did you do much training before this, or?
Not really, no. We did one race in Spain, but there were not too many races in the last few years, so not a lot of opportunity. But I guess all the years of training, then that just sort of comes back. It's like riding the bike. And I guess we look at our competition, and they're craving for all that training and other racing as a lead up, and they didn't get it either. So we just fell back on the experience and knowledge from previous years. So that was the 5th Worlds that I did with Ruben as a crew. On beach cats. So he's got some experience already, and he's away actually at the moment in Oman with Rita, my daughter, and they sail together on the NACRA 17. So they're having a crack at the Olympic project. This will be their first Worlds together. They just won just a few years ago, they won the NACRA 15 Worlds. And then decided to move on to the NACRA 17. So obviously all that knowledge that we've been sharing, we talk about it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the house, and it's a typical family discussion that goes on in a sailing family of what to do and how to do it. So it's all fun.
So the Formula 18 class has been a very successful class. I mean, what's your thought? Is it still on the rise? Do you foresee any more changes to it, or?
Well, I think it's been a successful formula because it's cheap enough to control the cost, so it doesn't get out of control with the development. It's accessible. It's popular in a lot of countries, so it's a good range of crew weights. It's not too light. There's a bit of an issue with some of the other boats that you have to be a certain weight or very light to perform. Like the Hobie 16, obviously you've got to sail with a very light crew weight. So the F18 really caters for the bigger guys, and that's why I think it's been successful for so long.
And in terms of not only the boat being successful, you being successful, I mean, what do you attribute, your longevity on that boat? Would you describe yourself as a more of a technical sailor? where you're really into the tuning, or are you more of a seat of the pants type sailor?
Oh, well, those who know me are definitely not a technical sailor. And I quite often get asked, what are my diamond settings, or what are my settings on the boat? I've really got no idea. I don't record all that. I just simply go sailing, look at the rig, feel the boat, feel the way the boat's characteristics are performing, and adjust things accordingly. So no, definitely not technical. But Ruben knows all the numbers, so you can ask him.
Now, the other question I had for you there is, it eluded me just for a second there, but I was going to talk to you maybe just in terms of cat sailing in general. Like, what are your get out of jail cards? Like, you have a bad start, 100 boat fleet. What are some of your fallback things if you don't have a good start?
Well, don't get a bad start. That's the beginning. Yeah. No, it often happens. I screw up the starts quite often, but the get out of jail is just to escape to clean air. I mean, you cannot sail in dirty air. It doesn't matter what you do. Go reaching, tack, duck all the fleet, whatever you got to do, get into clean air and then start playing the game. Because if you sail in dirty air for, in a 100-boat fleet, you just, like any fleet, but, I think Multihulls is even more extreme because, we're doing, for example, on the F18, we're doing 13, 14 knots upwind. You get into dirty air and you can knock 2 knots off that very easily. So the losses are huge in dirty air. So yeah, that's the first thing, get out of jail, and then start playing with your free air and hopefully make some right moves from there on.
Now, would you say with your multi-hull sailing, when you're scanning the course or doing your pre-race check, are you more interested in, is it more pressure or direction? Like when you're sailing these smaller boats, they want the star, for example, or tacking on a 2-degree ship. Are you more interested in the pressure, or I know you need a combination of both, but just is pressure kind of king on a multi-hull course?
Well, pressure's king downwind, a lot more than upwind. I mean, if it's 12 knots and it's gusting 18, your difference in boat speed is not so dramatic on the upwind. But if it's 12 knots gusting 18 downwind, you're a huge chunk faster in 18 knots going downhill. So pressure is the king downhill, and probably shifts and pressure are a bit of combination uphill. But it depends on how shifty it is too, and how much range in pressure there is. So if it's a stable breeze and it's consistent strength, then you're looking for some shifts. But if it's a gusty condition, then yeah. And we always have the principle that it's important to first get into the pressure and then decide what to do with the shift. So yeah, there's a combination of both.
So do you think as a multi-hull sailor, you almost need to be a little bit more patient on the course as opposed to, say, sailing a laser where, these guys, they get into a little header and they're immediately tacking? Do you find you got to be a little bit more patient as a multi-hull sailor?
Yes, it depends on the condition. There's some conditions you're looking for, very small shifts to make a gain. If it's a stable sort of breeze, but if it's shifty enough, I mean, don't be afraid to be throwing a few tacks in. There's opportunities, especially in a big fleet. If you see a group going to one side, that you can play with the shift to position yourself with that group is important also.
Yeah. So the other question, I mean, equipment in the F18. There's been quite an evolution over the last, I know we showed up at the Sarasota Worlds, that's where I met you, and with an older 2002 Tagger, and there's been quite an evolution. I mean, the center boards, the wing mast, the deck sweeper sails, I guess what I'm asking you is, as basically a professional sailor who could probably sail whichever boat he wants, do you do much research into where the venue is, and does that come into play what boat or what sail you want to use?
Well, yeah, we do develop the sails with 1D. Martin's been a great supporter of all of our F-18 sailing, and we do look at the conditions. We look at the sort of racing we'll be doing, and tune our sails. We do develop some stuff with him, so Spinnakers in particular. Obviously, he's been very active with the deck sweeper, mainsail, but and the boat, yeah, we've been using the Scorpion exploder for a number of years now. We found that that's the best all round. There's other boats which may go better in some condition and others in another condition, but I mean, in some conditions, I still like the Tiger. I mean, the Tiger is a brilliant boat in big waves, but the chances of getting 25 knots and big waves for a whole series are pretty rare. So no, we prefer the Scorpion at the moment. It's a great boat.
And as the boat has evolved, the F-18, have you changed your sailing style to any extent, or is it pretty much stayed?
No, we've probably changed a few small things. Obviously, we're trying a lot more now the double trapeze downwind, which we would not have done, 15 years ago. But I think that's also a characteristic of the boat. Those bigger volume boats, you can load them up a bit more, without pushing the bow under the water. But yeah, not too much. I mean, fundamentally, beach cat sailing, on an F-18 hasn't changed, for since tornado days. It's still, in principle, it's the same beast.
Do you get a chance when you're developing these sails? Do you get a chance to go out and do some two boat testing with them, or?
We do. To be accurate with two boat testing, you've got to spend a lot of time at it. And we like to go and line up against some other good teams, but to be realistic, when you're comparing to what you would do in an Olympic sail development program or testing program, it's just a fraction what we can achieve with an F-18. We just don't have the time and resources to be able to do it at that level. But yeah, we try and line up, we try and tune against each other and see what's fast, what's not. It's a good way of testing.
Now, when you're testing like that, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking, I mean, how do you recognize, without bringing in a whole lot of technology and photograph, how do you recognize if it's the equipment or you? Is it's you making the difference or the equipment?
Well, the simple way to double check that is keep switching boats with your training partner. I mean, that's tells you straight away. Is it technique? Is it crew weight? Is it the way you're trimming the main or pulling the Cunningham or whatever? There's a thousand variables, and it's a process of eliminating the variables to see where the differences are.
So I did get a chance to meet you in Sarasota, and the impression I got, I mean, you were nice enough, you came over, talked with us. I mean, we were a couple of hick guys from Thunder Bay, and the impression I got is that you seem like you stay on a pretty even keel. Like, a lot of the top teams, they seem to kind of get itchy underwear as the event goes on. And is that a good description of how you sail the boat also?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sport, we're in it for fun. We've got to, look at ourselves in the mirror and say, we're playing a game here. And, if you get too serious and wound up about it, then you're not going to perform. So, yeah, we take that same philosophy, whether it's racing in the Olympics or whether it's, a whatever project or whatever race we're in. It's a game. That's what it's about.
And I heard a funny story. I don't know if you would remember, but I forget which Olympics it was in. it was the Olympics where anyways, the tornado, it was going to be a light air venue. And I'm not sure you were the team that came up with this Code Zero or Jenniker type sail in place of the jib. And I wonder if you remember the incident you had with, I believe it was Roman Hagera, who was adamantly against that.
Well, yeah, Roman was not happy. He was defending gold medalist from Athens, and we, didn't want to show our hand until the last moment, because obviously then it opens the door for others to develop the same sort of technology. But it was an interesting event. I mean, World Sailing were throwing a pretty tough venue, not much wind, and they basically threw away our class rules and said, we're going to start racing in any condition. We had a 6-knot limit in our class, but then they said, well, we'll race down to 2 knots or whatever we can get going. So, and the venue was quite strange, a lot of current. The predominant wind was going with the current. So that meant that, there was bugger all apparent wind. And so the upwind was really, really long. Normally it's about a 60-40, but it was more like 75-25. You could take you forever to get upwind, and then, you'd zip downwind again with all the current, just get basically pushed down to the bottom mark. So we decided to build an upwind sail that would be dominant in such a course. And of course, the Olympics comes around and the wind turns the opposite direction and it's against the current, and then the whole game changes. So we pulled out of just the last minute. But I do recall Roman was a bit upset, and he threatened to withdraw from the Olympics. And he said it's just not fair, and he was all upset about it. And I said, well, that's the rules. We're playing within the rules. We just developed a sail that suits this condition. And he said, in the media in Austria, I think he was quoted as saying, well, if this is going to be allowed, we're going to pack our boat up and go home. So I bumped into him in the lift in the Olympic Village and said, g'day, Roman, how are you going? I heard you might be packing up. If you need a hand with your boat, I'm happy to help you load it in the container. And well, he didn't see the funny side of it, but again, it's just sport. It's all good banter and good sportsmanship. But yeah, utmost respect for Roman and Hans. They were dominant in the tornado class.
And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Just your thoughts on foiling.
Foiling. Well, you say you don't want to take up too much of my time. That's a long subject. But one thing I'd like to say is I really believe that the multi-hull, the beach cat scene, has missed an enormous opportunity in foiling. And the reason is very simple. ACATs were designed long time ago with 3 rules: length, width, and sail area. That's when I started sailing them. They started then developing, and then they came out with a foiling version. And then the class decided, well, we don't want to go foiling. So they designed the rules to prohibit foiling, or effectively trying to prohibit foiling. With the foil coming through the deck and tips not closer than X amount, and all the restrictions to what I would say is to try and prohibit it. But obviously there's a lot of smart people in the world and in the sailing world, and they develop ACATs that could actually properly foil, and they've evolved pretty nicely. But the concept, the basic concept of a Z foil on a catamaran, to me it's flawed. It's not exploiting the best foiling option for a multi-hull. And where I really believe that the multi-hull has missed the opportunity is NACRA and the Olympic multi-hull have taken that model of what an ACAT is with a Z foil and turned it into the Olympic multi-hull. Now there's so many better ways to go foiling on a multi-hull than a Z foil on a heavy, aluminium glass boat. Or it's carbon now, but it's still way too heavy. NACRA produce a very nice foiling 20. So did the Phantom. I mean, they were nice foiling boats, controllable, high performance. NACRA have done the best they can, but Multihulls missed the boat here. And to me, they've completely lost the opportunity to showcase multi-hull foiling in the Olympics. I mean, I watched the Tokyo Olympics and was just amazed that it's crash and burn, never foiling upwind. You know, it just doesn't work. The best guys in the world still can't do it. So, yeah, that's my little beef about foiling on cats. That's for sure.
So I where I wanted to go with this, but I'd appreciate your thoughts on that. Have you done much foiling? Are you interested or?
I've done a bit. Yeah, I mean, I had an ACAT for a while. It takes a lot of time to train on them to get up to the level of the top guys. Yes, out on the GC32s a bit. I've done a bit of foiling and I enjoy it. But like I said, I coached for a long time on the NACRA 17, both the C foil and the Z foil. And every time I was just going to an event, looking at them, thinking, what are they doing? We actually did some onboard footage, and in not unusual conditions, but choppy, 15 knots. We were getting 6, 10, 12% flight time in a race. Just, I mean, what's that about? I mean, the America's Cup or the Sail GP, they're 100% flight time. I remember watching America's Cup race in Bermuda when Team New Zealand Ashby was on board with Pete Burling, and they had 100% flight time, and NACRA's in the Olympics with 8% flight time. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyhow, yes, I enjoy it. I'd like to do some more of it, but yeah, I'd see that there's a better way forward for multi-hull foiling.
Yeah, I see where they talked about the wands, like the moth, and but there's lots of restrictions, like you said, on the ACAT.
Yeah.
Just a couple last questions here.
Sure.
I mean, I had Santi on the program, and his story. I think he's almost the same age as you, or maybe a year older.
He's a bit older, yeah.
and he's kept himself pretty motivated. And one of the thoughts was, he's gone from boat to boat. I mean, he's been to the Olympics in a Soling, a laser, like yourself, the Tornado, the sport version with a twin. So what exactly keeps you motivated, especially the F-18? Like what keeps you motivated to keep going?
Well, in the small cats, it's my kids. I just love sailing with them on all the small cats, whether it's Hobie Worlds or a F-18 or whatever, round Texel on a 20-footer. On the bigger boats, it's a different game. I mean, we're racing, everything from 60, 80, 100 footers, even the super yachts. I do quite a bit of super yacht racing now. And the biggest motivation still is competition. Every time there's a race, I'm too competitive to sit back and just be passive. I just get in there and love it.
And what's been your favorite cat? Maybe the one you're on right now, or
favorite? I still have a soft spot for a 18 square meter. 18 square meter to me was one of the most enjoyable, powerful sorts of off the beach cat you could imagine. And I remember sailing, way back in the 80s, the NACRA 18 square meter. And the Forbes family built a solid wing for it. So I raced that a couple of times and did North Americans, did a lot of racing on those boats. And I think that's a boat that should still be around. I'd like to be racing that.
I guess I missed the NACRA 18 square meter. Where did that fall with their 5.2s and 5.8s? When timeline was that you're talking?
It was from the early 80s, and Tom's brother, Tom Rowland's brother, Fred Rowland, was an active campaigner and Chris Christensen was in there. He was racing them. Who else was in there? Bob Berkstead was racing there. We had a great time, and those boats were, sensationally fun to sail for a single-hander, 18-foot long, and some of them were, 14, 15 feet wide. Just sensational.